The Goan landscape is dotted with a lot of crosses. You can see these crosses of different sizes and shapes. We look at it as a cross, but deeper meaning about it, or to find out what they represent, we don't really know. So, to know more about crosses, let's go to the Bigfoot Cross Museum, where there are 1,602 crosses displayed in 96 different categories. Here what you can see is the folk faith. How crosses have been used by everyday people. Now for example, if you see these crosses, they are of just bamboo or like of sticks. People just use them as folk. Whatever was available, they made use of it and they made the crosses. Now on top, if you see, there's a line of crosses done out of bone and different other materials, which they use as pendants, or sometimes they made it whenever they prayed, they used as a rosary. Now this is a typical cross which is done of a bark of a tree. Now why this is important is this bark has some medicinal values. Now they used to put this cross in the water, boil it up and have a bath. That help them for immunity and sometimes help them for different other diseases, like, what should I say, when they get a rash or something, this would help. Now this cross is a medicinal cross as well as cross which they kept at home. Now here you see the cross which is the images of ivory. Most of our Goan houses used to have this type of crosses. There was the wooden cross with an ivory image. The ivory image, whenever they had that, it was to show like, they belonged to a certain, or they had the money. So they had this type. The others had the simple ordinary crosses. The next one is a simple cross which normally was put on the coffins. Earlier they used to use of metal and the statue was of cast. Now these are different crosses which we used in everyday life. And now is the modern one, which the whole design is been done by an artist just to show or represent the Christ, how he was on the cross. Now this cross is made out of glass, but the image is of metal. Now the thing is, the craftsmen who create what they feel, they were glass makers. So they have made a cross out of glass, but the statue, the image is of metal. Now there is a combination of different things in the cross which shows, or rather the artist expresses how he can put different things, how faith is in different ways. Showing different faiths across a Om and the Islamic symbol. Here you can see different types of crosses, still a more variety. The holding cross, which you hold and you can pray, but that helps you in concentration. The Coptic cross, the Saint Francis cross, the Jerusalem cross, which has one cross and 4 little crosses in it. Then you have bookmarks in this of a cross. So you have the bookmark where the cross is there, and you know where there are certain scriptures which relate to the cross. Normally they used it. The glory cross is where from behind the rays of the sun are shown. The Tzoi cross, here we use mostly the part for different things, like for Ganesh festivals and all that. Now here the cross has been sitting on that type of a part. The Latin cross, which is normally everywhere, it's just one stick and another arm. But here what you can see is the cross of Madre Perla. this is something very much unique. Then we have the Russian cross. The fleur-de-lis cross. How you can distinguish the fleur-de-lis is the ends have something like petals. Then these are crosses which are seen on both sides. For example, one side is the crucifixion, the other side is different. This from the Bible. The anchor cross is the one which mostly the fisher folk or the sailors used. We have the Egyptian cross. The Egyptian cross you can distinguish when it has the top portion into a oval shape. You have the Latin cross again here. Here you have the Cardinal's cross which has two arms and two angels on both the sides. The Damien cross is something to do with our icons. The whole thing is painted on the cross, and it's more, you can call it also as an icon cross, but it's Saint Damian's cross. Now here we have a cross which is something to do with Spain. It's known as the Santiago cross, which you see it more in Spain, or it's their cross, as you say. Then these are other crosses. Here in the Latin cross you can see the image of Christ rendered in a different way, showing what that expression of pain is shown on his face. The Greek cross, the arms are both the same. Then we have the Eucharistic cross, where the cross represents what happens at the Mass. Again, the papal cross, which has the two arms instead of a single arm. The Gamma cross, the Ethiopian cross, St. James cross. Now this, you can't see any arms, but it is more of a panel where a lot of things are described. Then the 5 wounds of Christ. So there are 5 different stones which are put where it speaks about the 5 wounds of Christ. Here you will see different varieties of crosses, each one depicting one thing. Then you have the man cross. Like we always complain saying we have a lot of problem. We are crucified, but we don't look at a positive side. So this cross explains that if we unfold ourselves, there is a lot of positive things which happen in our everyday life. Now here you can see the medicinal wheel. We call them the Native Americans. They had certain things which spoke about weather and all that. That was depicted on the cross. Now if you see all these beads, they have certain meaning for each thing. It's also known as the cross of universal harmony, like all of them living together. Now Pope Francis has got his different cross. It has the shepherd looking after the sheep. He represents Christ, how he looked after all the different people. Then we have the African cross, which is done, or rather the impression of them of how Christ was crucified. Rather, he was put more in a square box. Then the fish cross shows the fish tail. That's how we can know that it is the fish cross. The Passion cross. Now the Passion cross has all the ends of the arms pointed. They have a lot of decorative work also in them. So this is the Passion cross. Now we speak about temptations, we speak about sin and all that. Here we have a cross which has skulls, speaking about death, speaking about temptation. But this is to keep away. Even Christ was tempted to was tempted. But here the temptation cross says you can be away from temptations. The void cross, where the inside of the cross is open, you can see through and through. Now this type of crosses or this symbol you will find in most of the forts and different things where they have used this as a cross. Then we have the St. Andrew's cross, which is the same, arms are the same, but it is like an X. So in Vasco, in the church, you will find this type of a cross. Now we go to Saint Benedict. Saint Benedict cross is getting a lot of popularity because of the medal which is there behind the crucifix, or which is embedded inside. The lunar cross has something to do with the moon. The ends are more of a semicircle. Then Saint Damian's cross, as I've said earlier, it's more of an iconic cross. The Pati cross is the one which has the ends big. Normally when these knights and all of them were given a cross, these were the crosses used to give them. Then we have the spear cross. The whole cross is made out of sphere. The star cross. The interesting one is the Trinity cross, where God the Father, Son and the Holy Spirit is depicted. Jesus is on the cross, God the Father is on top, and the Holy Spirit either is in the middle or is down. Then we have the Southern Cross. Now the Southern Cross speaks more about the seasons. Like on the cross you have 4 different colors on all the 4 arms of the cross, which depict different seasons. The fish cross. Earlier, when the cross was used, it was something to do with shame. So people, the Christianity, they started using the fish as the symbol for Christianity. Later on, the cross was used. The budded cross, here what you can see is 3 different circles on the arms of the cross. So it's known as the budded cross. Now these are the most commonly used crosses at some time. The Latin and the budded were the common crosses. This cross, you'll find it more in Goan homes. The peculiarity is that it has the skull and the 2 bones down below, representing that end will be back to ashes or will be back to the earth. The St. Thomas cross, which shows you the dove on top and this edge below. Diamond cross, which has a lot of diamond. A lot of ladies use this as a ornamental or a decorative cross. The fork cross, the Y cross also it is known as, which is a little unusual. The Thou cross. Thou cross doesn't have the top arm. It's just the T. So it was known as the Thou cross or Saint Anthony's cross. The arrow cross, again having the arrow on arrow marks or arrow heads on all the 4 arms. This is an Irish cross, which is something a little interesting. It has a circle around the joint of the arms, and most of them are well decorated, and the designs on them is quite an intricate one. This is St. Peter's cross. From this cross, the whole concept of starting the museum, or rather starting an exhibition, from the exhibition to the museum, it started. When we picked up this cross, we found that the long arm had the hook. So the question was, why the long arm has a hook? When we went to find out or the details about this cross, we found it was St. Peter's cross. So we look at the crosses thinking that they are just crosses or they are just symbols of faith. But the thought is why there are different types. Then we slowly found out there were so many types of crosses, and each cross had a certain meaning behind it. And it had a religious, what we should say, meaning, or they had for a certain purpose. So after we got say around 500 crosses, we had an exhibition. Then when it reached 1,000 crosses, we had this museum. Now here, Saint Peter, why it is upside down is he didn't want to be crucified as Christ was crucified. So they decided to crucify him upside down. That's why Saint Peter's cross is upside down. Here there are others also, the Mexican cross, you have the square cross, you have the fleur-de-lis cross, the Greek cross, the apple cross. These are different varieties of crosses which you can see here in this museum. This is an Ethiopian cross. In Ethiopia, designing crosses is some art, and the tourism is based on the sale of crosses. This cross which you see, this is more of a typical art which is on it. It's not for veneration, but these crosses were used more in certain places where once they had harvested the grain when they kept, they just placed the cross over it and then they walked home. Or anything which was done in the open, they left the cross as if to guard the whole place. So this has a typical art which is found in Konkoli on one of these wooden parts which are known. So these artists from there have painted these crosses. The Fiji cross, this dates back to the days where these crusaders were. They carried this cross just to mark the areas, saying that Christianity was at a certain place. So the end, it was always pointed. The Russian cross, which has the double arm plus another, as you say, the footrest. Here you can see different types of crosses, each rendered by different people from different places, or rather from all over the world. You have some coming from Africa, the other ones are from Europe, and this comes from Canada. So how different artists or different people have reproduced these crosses for their explaining what exactly they mean about the cross. Here, what you have seen is just the glimpses of it. But there are much more and much more things to see and to know about the crosses, about the people behind who create them, or rather who do them or make them, and the faith which people have in the cross.